Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. IRS reminds U.S. territory residents about U.S. income tax rules relating to pandemic unemployment compensation. IR 2021-81, April 8, 2021, Washington. The Internal Revenue Service reminds eligible residents of the U.S. territories that if they receive unemployment compensation payments that are otherwise subject to U.S. income tax, they may be eligible to exclude up to $10,200 per person of unemployment compensation from U.S. income tax for 2020, following legislation that was passed March 11, 2021. So again, general rule on the unemployment. Usually, if you have the unemployment, that would be something that would have to be counted as wages. You would get basically a 1099 on it, and you would have to include it as wages and pay basically taxes on it. But you could have an exception then for 2020 here due to a rule in 2020 that people need to be aware of. So taxpayers with modified adjusted income of less than $150,000 may exclude the first $10,200 of unemployment compensation from their 2020 federal income tax return. In the case of taxpayers that are married filing jointly, the maximum exclusion would be $10,200 for each spouse for a maximum of $20,400. Taxpayers who filed before the law was passed should not file an amended return. So note this law came in late here, and if you follow the prior kind of rules, you would have included it in income. And now you're thinking, well, I already filed. If you're in that situation, I included it in income. I possibly paid income taxes on it. What do I do at this point? Do I have to file an amended return in order to get, the difference, get it back? And they're basically saying, no, you don't need to file an amended return, which is nice because filing an amended return is kind of a pain. Don't typically want to do it unless you have to, unless it's relevant to do it. And usually the unemployment compensation for many people may not be substantially significant. And it might cost more to file the amended return because it's a little complicated to do. So the IRS is basically saying, no, if you filed and you didn't pick that up because we issued the law late, this is my interpretation of what they're saying. Because we issued the law late, we're not going to require you to file an amended return. It's not really your fault because you filed early and you didn't know about this and you did the right thing. So the IRS is going to hopefully be able to pick that up then on their side if you already filed and make the adjustment for you is the assumption here. So last year, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Congress passed a legislative providing eligible individuals with two new types of pandemic-related unemployment compensation, which are subject to the same U.S. tax rules that apply to other unemployment compensation, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, the PUA, Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, the FPUC. The $10,200 exclusion applies to these new types of unemployment compensation for U.S. income tax purposes. So, same kind of rule they're basically saying. As for the unemployment in that would be like unemployment compensation typically from the state to these other types of compensation falling under the category, I guess, of unemployment, and therefore something that possibly not taxable in the 2020 tax return due to this change, due to this new rule, that being, once again, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, the PUA, and the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, the FPUC. The IRS also notes that for U.S. income tax purposes, unemployment compensation is generally considered sourced where the taxpayer performed the underlying services. For guidance on the U.S. income taxation of residents of the U.S. territories, see publication 570, Tax Guide for Individuals with Income from U.S. Possessions. There's a link to that here. The U.S. territories are American Samoa, the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. U.S. territory residents should contact their territory tax department with questions relating to the taxation of COVID-related unemployment compensation at the territory level.